Come here. Come here. Look how it is, everyone. It's Zoey. What are you looking at? What do you see? Look, Zoe. Look right there. No. Okay. No. Okay. Goodbye. Bye. Look who it is. It's Zoey Bear. Hi, Zoey. Look, the camera's looking at you. Oh, yeah, girl. You sweet baby. We love you, Zoey. We love you so much. Oh, look who else it is. Oh, Mr. Man's coming in to go potty. Oh, hello and welcome back. It's been a heck of a morning. It's Tuesday, January 21st, 2025, and we are reading chapter 19 of Abhorsen by Garth Nix today. There was your cute cat Cameo for this book. Please excuse my messy room. You got to see some of my mess that's on the floor. There's so much stuff in this room. I don't have the courage to show it to you because it's my studio and I have not yet gotten everything where it's supposed to be, where I'd like it to be. So I still have piles of stuff on the floor around here. And I also have the cat litter box in here. So sometimes they like to kick the litter all over the place because they're messy. And it's easier for it to be in here where I can just sweep it up off the hardwood floor. But, oh, check this out. Look at that. Raisin used me as a springboard this morning to jump onto the counter. And it's so itchy. I feel like a teenager trying to hide a hickey from you guys. I didn't even put my necklace on because it's so itchy. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. I told my mom this morning that I've started reading ahead in the book. I haven't done this at all since, I didn't read ahead at all during Sabriel or Lirael, but I know the end of this book is going to break my heart because I remember how everything happens now and how it ends, and oh my god, I'm already starting to well up thinking about it. I don't know how I'm gonna get through the end of this book without just bursting and crying, so I wanted to read ahead, so like to mentally prepare myself for what, you know, is going to happen. I'm so excited for you guys to listen to it, and it's gonna be so good. Jesus Christ, let me get a tissue. And I told you guys yesterday I'm hormonal, like I'm ending this book at a really inopportune time of the month, but it will be real, my real emotions, and it's gonna be really good. So until we get there, let's read chapter 19 today. Chapter 19, A Tin of Sardines. As Clore fled, the mass of dead hands erupted like an anthill splashed with hot water. They ran in all directions, the most stupid of them towards Lirael, Sam, and the dog. Mogget ran between their legs, laughing, as charter magic fire burnt through their sinews and sent them crashing to the ground. The dog's barking sent their spirits back into death, and Sereneth commanded them to relinquish their bodies. In a few mad minutes, it was all over. The echoes of bell and bark died away, leaving Lirael and her companions standing on an empty road under the moon and stars, surrounded by 100 bodies that were no more than empty husks. The silence was broken by cheering and yelling from the soldiers behind them. Lirael ignored it and called out to Mogget. "Why did you tell Clore to run? We were winning! And what was that no-face thing about?" "It was quicker, which I thought was the point," said Mogget. He went up to Sam's feet and sat there, yawning. "Clore was always overcautious, even when she was alive. I'm tired now. Can you carry me?" Sam sighed. He sheathed his sword and picked the cat up, letting the little beast rest in the crook of his arm. "It was quicker," he said to Lirael apologetically. And I hate to mention it, but there are a lot more dead hands coming. And shadow hands, unless I'm mistaken." "You're not mistaken," growled the dog. She was looking suspiciously at Mogget. "Though, like my mistress, I am not satisfied with the Mogget's motivation or explanation. I suggest we leave immediately. We have little time." As if in answer to her words, the sound of truck engines came from down the road. Obviously, Lieutenant Tyndall and his men had pushed them back far enough, and they could start again. "I hope we can loop around," said Sam anxiously, as they ran to the trucks. "If the wind changes again, we'll be stranded even farther away." "We could try and work it," Lirael began. Then she shook her head. "No, of course not. That would only make it worse for the Ancestor and... what do you call it? Technologia?" "Close enough," puffed Sam. "Come on!" They'd caught up with Major Green and the rear platoon, who were double-timing back to the trucks. The major beamed at them as they matched his pace, and several soldiers slapped their rifles in salute. The atmosphere was very different from what it had been only a few minutes before. Lieutenant Tyndall was waiting by the lead truck, studying the map once again, this time with the aid of a working electric flashlight. He looked up and saluted as Lirael, Sam, and Major Green approached. "I found a road that will work," he said quickly. "I think we might even be able to beat Hedge there." "How?" asked Lirael urgently. "Well, the only road south from the western strong point winds up through these hills here," he said, pointing. "It's a single lane, and not even metalled. Heavily laden wagons, as McCullough described them to me, will take a day at least to get up through there. They can't possibly be at the mill before late afternoon. We can be there soon after dawn." "Good work, Tyndall!" exclaimed the major, clapping him on the back. "Is there any other way the hemispheres could be taken to the mill?" asked Sam. "This has all been planned so carefully by Hedge. In both the kingdom and here, everything was prepared. Using the Sutherlings to make more dead, the wagons ready." Tyndall looked at the map again. The flashlight beam darted in several directions over it as he thought about possible alternatives. "Well," he said finally, "I suppose they could take the hemispheres by wagon to the sea, load them on boats, and take them south, and then up the lock to the old dock at the mill. But there's nowhere to load them near the western strong point." "Yes, there is," said the major, suddenly grim again. He pointed at a single symbol on the map, a vertical stroke surrounded by 4 angled strokes. "There's a navy dock at the western light." "That's what Hedge will be doing," said Lirael, suddenly chill with certainty. "How quickly can they go by sea?" "Loading the hemispheres would take a while," said Sam, joining the cluster of heads bent over the map. "And they'll have to sail, not steam. The Hedge will work the wind. I'd say at least 8 hours." There was a moment of silence after his words. Then, by unspoken consent, the huddle exploded into action. Green snatched the map and hauled himself up into the cab of the first truck. Lirael and her companions ran to the back to jump in, and Lieutenant Tyndall ran along the road, waving his hand and shouting, "Go! Go!" as the trucks revved higher and slowly began to move out, their headlights flickering as the engines took the strain. In the back of the truck, Sam put Mogget on top of his many times mended pack and sat down next to it. As he did, he pulled a small metal container out of his belt pouch and set it next to the cat's nose. For a few seconds, the cat appeared to be sound asleep. Then one green eye opened a fraction. "What's that?" asked Mogget. "Sardines," said Sam. "I knew they were standard rations, so I got a few tins for you." "What are sardines?" asked Mogget suspiciously. "And why is there a key? Is this some sort of Abhorsen joke?" In answer, Sam tore the key off and slowly unwound the top of the tin. The rich smell of sardines spilled out. Mogget watched the procedure avidly, his eyes never leaving the tin. When Sam put it down, narrowly avoiding cutting himself as the truck went over a series of bumps, Mogget sniffed the sardines cautiously. "Why are you giving me this?" "You like fish," said Sam. "Besides, I said I would." Mogget tore his gaze away from the sardines and looked at Sam. His eyes narrowed, but he saw no sign of guile in Sam's face. The little cat shook his head, and then ate the sardines in a flash, leaving the tin spotless and empty. Lirael and the dog glanced at his exhibition of gluttony, but both were more interested in what was going on outside and behind them. Lirael pushed aside the canvas flap, and they looked past the 3 following trucks. Lirael could sense the second, much larger group of dead and shadow hands that was advancing along the road. The shadow hands, which were both more powerful than the dead hands and unconstrained by flesh, were moving very swiftly, some of them leaping and gliding like enormous bats ahead of the main body of their shambling, corpse-dwelling brethren. They would undoubtedly wreak great trouble somewhere, but she could not spare them any further thought. The greater danger lay to the west, and already a little south, where lightning played on the horizon. Lirael noticed that the other artificial thunder from the Ancestian artillery had ceased some time before, but she had been too busy to hear it stop. "Dog," whispered Lirael. She drew the dog closer and hugged her about the neck. "Dog, what if we're too late to destroy the lightning farm? What if the hemispheres join?" The dog didn't say anything. She snuffled at Lirael's ear instead and thumped her tail on the truck floor. "I have to go into death, don't I?" whispered Lirael. "To use the dark mirror and find out how it was bound in the beginning." Still the dog didn't speak. "Will you come with me?" asked Lirael, her whisper so low no human could have heard it. "Yes," said the dog. "Wherever you walk, I will be there." "When should we go?" asked Lirael. "Not yet," muttered the dog. "Not until there's no other choice. Perhaps we will still reach the lightning farm before Hedge." "I hope so," said Lirael. She hugged the dog again, then let her go, and settled back onto her own pack. Sam was already asleep on the opposite side of the truck, with Mogget curled up against him, the empty sardine tin sliding about on the wooden floor of the truck. Lirael picked it up, wrinkled her nose, and wedged it into a corner where it wouldn't rattle. "I will keep watch," said the disreputable dog. "You should sleep, mistress. There are still several hours before the dawn, and you will need all your strength." "I don't think I can sleep," said Lirael quietly, but she leaned back on her pack and closed her eyes. Her whole body felt edgy, and if she had been able to, she would have got up and practiced with her sword, or done something to try to drain the feeling off with exercise. But there was nothing she could do in the back of a moving vehicle, except lie there and worry about what lay ahead. So she did that, and surprisingly soon crossed the line between wakeful worrying and troubled sleep. The dog lay with her head on her paws and watched Lirael toss and turn and mumble in her sleep. Beneath them, the truck rattled and vibrated, the roar of the engine going up and down as the vehicle negotiated bends and rises and falls in the road. After an hour or so, Mogget opened one eye. He saw the dog watching and quickly shut it again. The dog quietly got up and stalked over, pushing her snout down right against Mogget's little pink nose. "Tell me why I shouldn't take you by the scruff of your neck and throw you off right now," whispered the dog. Mogget opened one untroubled eye again. "I'd only run behind," he whispered back. "Besides, she gave me the benefit of the doubt. Can you do anything less?" "I am not so charitable," said the dog, showing her teeth. "Let me remind you that should you turn, I will make it my business to see that you are ended for it." "Will you?" purred Mogget, opening his other eye. "What if you can't?" The dog growled, low and menacing. It was enough to wake Sam, who blinked and reached for his sword. "What is it?" he asked sleepily. "Nothing," said the dog. She turned back to Lirael and plonked herself down with a frustrated sigh. "Nothing to worry about. Go back to sleep." Mogget smiled and shook his head, the miniature Rana tinkling. Sam yawned mightily at the sound and slipped back against his pack, asleep again in an instant. Nicholas Sayer swam into wakefulness like a fish rising to a fly, a slow ascent that left him gasping and confused, flopping about like that same fish fresh caught on the shores of a loch, which was where he was. He sat up and looked around. Some part of his mind was comforted by the fact that he was in a twilight world made by the storm clouds above him, and that lightning was crackling down less than 50 yards away. He was less interested in the pallid half-sun in the east, just rising above the ridge. Nicholas was lying on a pile of straw next to a hut, off to one side of what had once been an active wharf. 20 yards away, Hedge's men swore and cursed as they wrestled with sheer legs, ropes, and pulleys to swing one of the silver hemispheres ashore from a small coastal trader. Another coaster stood off the wharf, several hundred yards into the loch, carefully positioned not to get close enough for the hemispheres to work their violent repulsion on each other. Nicholas smiled. They were at Forwin Mill. He couldn't remember how they had done it, but they'd got the hemispheres across the wall. The lightning farm was ready, and all they had to do was join the hemispheres, and everything would fall into place. Thunder cracked, and someone screamed. A man fell away from the boat, his skin blackened and hair on fire. He lay on the dock, writhing and groaning, till one of the other men stepped down and quickly cut his throat. Nick watched it all happen quite calmly. It was just the price of dealing with the hemispheres, as they were all that mattered. Slowly, Nick got up, first to all fours, and then fully upright. It was hard work, and he had to clutch at the broken drain pipe of the hut for a while, till the dizziness passed. But slowly, he grew steadier. Another man died as he stood there, but Nick didn't even notice. He had eyes only for the sheen of the hemispheres and the progression of the work. Soon the first hemisphere would be ready to be shifted into the ruined shell of the timber mill. It would be loaded into a special cradle mounted on a waiting railway wagon, one of two on the same short stretch of track. At least that was what Nicholas had ordered. It occurred to him that he hadn't actually inspected the lightning farm. He had drawn the plans and paid for its construction before leaving the Old Kingdom. That seemed like a very long time ago. He'd never seen the lightning farm in actuality, only in paper plans and in his troubled dreams. He was still weak from the illness he'd picked up across the wall, too weak to easily walk around. He needed a stick or a crutch. There was a stretcher nearby, a simple thing of canvas and wood. Perhaps he could pull out one of the poles and use that as a staff, Nick thought. Very slowly, and with infinite care, he walked over to the stretcher, cursing his weakness as he nearly fell. He knelt down and removed the pole, dragging it out of the canvas loops. It was easily 8 feet long, and a bit heavy, but it would be better than nothing. He was about to use it to stand up, when he saw something glowing on the stretcher. A piece of splintered wood, painted with strange, luminous symbols. Puzzled, he reached out to pick it up. As he touched it, his body convulsed, and he was violently sick. But even as he vomited, he kept one finger on what he now knew was a fragment of a wind flute. He couldn't pick it up, for his hand refused to obey him and close, but he could touch it. As long as he touched it, memory came rushing back. As long as he touched it, he was really Nicholas Sayre, and not some puppet of the shining hemispheres so close by. "Word of a Sayre," he whispered, remembering Lirael again. "I must stop this." He stayed crouched over the pole, over his own vomit, just touching the fragment, while his mind worked fiercely at his predicament. As soon as he let the charm go, he would regress, go back to being a mindless servant. He could not pick it up or carry it in his hands, yet there had to be some way he could keep it close enough to work its magic, to remind him who he was. Nick inspected himself. He was both shocked and scared by how thin he had become, and by the blue and purple bruising that extended all down the left side of his chest. His shirt was merely threads and tatters, and his trousers were not much better, secured at his skinny waist not by a belt, but by a piece of tarred rope. The pockets were gone, as were his underclothes, but the cuffs on his trousers were still turned up. Nick felt in them with his right hand, making sure they would hold. The fine woolen cloth was thinner than it had been only weeks before, but it would not easily tear. Panting with the effort, he maneuvered his ankle as close to the wind flute fragment as he could. pulled the cuff open, and used his other hand to sweep the chunk of wood towards it. It took a couple of attempts, but finally he got it in. As he did, he forgot what he was doing, till a few seconds later the trouser cuff hit against his skin. Pain shot through his ankle, but it was bearable. He didn't want to look at the hemispheres, but he found himself doing so anyway. The first one was on the wharf. Many people were swarming about it, trying new ropes for dragging and untying the ones used to swing it ashore. Nick saw that many of the workers grabbing the landward ropes were night crew again. Somewhat better-looking ones, though still rotting under their blue hats and scarves. No, Nick thought, as the wooden charm slapped against his ankle. They were not diseased humans, but dead creatures, corpses brought into a semblance of life by Hedge. Unlike the normal men, they did not seem troubled by close proximity to the hemispheres, or by the constant lightning. As if even thinking his name summoned Hedge, in the afterflash of the most recent lightning strike, the necromancer suddenly appeared at the side of the hemisphere. Once again, Nick was surprised by how monstrous Hedge had become. Shadows crawled across his skull, twining into the fire deep in his eyes, and his fingers dripped with red, vicious flames. The necromancer walked to the bow of the coaster and shouted something. Men moved quickly to obey, though it was clear they were nearly all wounded in some way, or sick. They cast off and raised sail, and the boat slid away from the wharf. The other, loaded coaster immediately began to make its approach. Hedge watched it come in and raised his hands above his head. Then he spoke, harsh words that made the air ripple around him and the ground shiver. He stretched out one hand towards the waters of the loch and called again, making gestures that left after-trails of red fire in the air. Fog began to rise out of the loch. Thin, white tendrils spiraled up and up, dragging thicker trails of mist behind them. Hedge gestured to the right and left, and the tendrils spread sideways, dragging more fog up out of the water to form a wall that slowly extended down the full length of the loch. As it spread sideways, it also rolled forward, towards the wharf, the timber mill, the loch valley, and the hills beyond. Hedge clapped his hands and turned back. His eyes fell on Nick, who instantly looked down and clutched at his chest. He heard the necromancer approach, his heels loud on the wooden planks. "Hemispheres," mumbled Nick quickly, as the footsteps stopped in front of him. "The hemispheres we must—" "All progresses well," said Hedge. "I've raised a sea fog that will resist any attempts to move it, should there be any amongst our enemies skilled enough to try. Do you wish to instruct me further, master?" Nick felt something move in his chest, like a panicked heartbeat, only stronger and much more frightening and repulsive. He gasped at the pain of it and fell forward, his hands scrabbling at the planks, fingernails breaking as he tore at the wood. Hedge waited till the spasm subsided. Nick lay there panting, unable to speak, waiting for unconsciousness and the thing within him to take over. But it did not rise, and after several minutes, Hedge walked away. Nick rolled onto his back and watched the fog roll across the sky, blanketing out the storm clouds, though not the lightning. Fog lit by lightning was not a sight he had ever expected to see, he thought, some part of him making notes at the strange effects. But the greater part of his mind was given over to something much more important. He had to stop Hedge from using the lightning farm. And that's the end of chapter 19. Oh, man, that was hard to read. I found myself starting to get lost in the visuals of reading that, and I kept making mistakes. Oh, I hope these next few chapters are easier to read. I hope you enjoyed that reading. If you did, I would love it if you would like this video. You know the drill. I love reading your comments, so comment if you'd like. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. So, I don't know what I'm going to do with the rest of the day, other than edit and eat. And, I went outside yesterday. I told you guys I was going to get out of the house, and I did. I walked outside. I walked out in the backyard, and it was so cold. I tried to take a video outside. I said, this is the perfect lighting and everything to take some video to show everybody my snowy backyard. And I could barely stand it. I even said, it is so cold. I can't stand it. It just burned my face. I put on so many clothes. I don't know if you know who she is. I love watching Jonna Jensen. She's Swedish. She does YouTube videos. And she lives in the forests of northern Sweden. And, I mean, it gets like 20 some below zero there. And she's outside in her, all bundled up, but she just has her face uncovered. And I don't know, I'm just not that tough, I guess. It felt like I was getting a sunburn from the coldness and the wind. And there was barely any wind, so I love wintertime, but I'm not that tough for these cold winters. And I think it's only like 8 degrees outside today. So I'm just praying that my pipes stay nice and strong and stays nice and warm in here. So anyways, I digress. I hope you enjoyed that reading. I can't wait to read again tomorrow. I want so badly to just finish reading this in one go so we can all read the rest of it together, because it's gotten hard for me to stop. I want to keep reading. It's gotten so good. But anyways, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening. Do something fun. Stay warm or stay cool. Yeah, that's it. Take care. And as always, may your magic manifest. Bye. See you tomorrow.